Hi there, Man Alive listener. This is your host, Shayna James. You may or may not know that I started a new podcast. It's called Practicing Love, Have the Best Love and Sex of Your Life After 40. I wanted to post a few episodes over here so you can get a feel for the new podcast and hopefully subscribe to it so you don't miss any of the new episodes. I'm excited to build on Man Alive and support people, all people, with love and relationships, dating and sex, and what it takes to not only keep love and sex alive, but to actually have the best love and sex of your life, especially in midlife and beyond. Though to be honest, whatever age you are, there will be powerful information for you there. So I hope you enjoy this episode of Practicing Love, and feel free to reach out with questions and ahas, and also topics you'd like to see covered there. If you haven't yet taken the quiz to see what keeps you from having the best love and sex of your life, go to shaynajamescoaching.com/quiz. You'll get a personalized report of your strengths and challenges in the 5 crucial areas that lead to your most fulfilling and exciting love and sex life. Go to shaynajamescoaching.com/quiz to find out. Hello and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shayna James. And I'm excited to be here today to have a conversation about sex and sexual satisfaction, sexual fulfillment, and actually looking at what is sex actually for beyond what our culture feeds us. And when I was writing my book, Honest Sex, and I looked up, what is the definition of sex, I was shocked. And I wanted to throw the dictionary. I was so disappointed by the limited definitions and what most of us are taught that sex is. So I'm really excited to have an amazing guest here today, Rob Kanzler, to talk about this. And Rob, I know you to be a very deep person and one who doesn't take the world at face value, who really, has a hunger for understanding the deeper, the more real and authentic. And I love that you've been on this journey of really looking at sexual fulfillment and satisfaction from a different place than many people on this planet look at it from.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. I'm curious where we're going to go in this conversation.
Yeah. So if we were just to kind of dive into the heart of it, from the start, I'm curious, you have been looking at sexual satisfaction and sexual fulfillment, like what that actually is versus what we see as a society. Can you first start with, what do you see that the masses see, receive, like how do we hold it sexually? And then we'll get into, what are you seeing that we're not seeing?
Okay. So many different directions, even from the get-go. I feel like, okay, which way do I want to take this one? So I can say that like one main feature that stands out for me in hearing your kind of prompting and pointing us in here is how over and over and over and over again I have heard from people that they are not sexually fulfilled, especially in moments of reflection where they can be honest and really tune in and not just answer from their heads, but really answer from a place of like, am I living or even on track towards the things that I really want, the things that would be most fulfilling?
Yep.
And even saying what I want sexually kind of invokes fantasy, imagery, myth, yada, 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 that there's this almost like overlaid, inherited, conditioned frame of what do I want, right? Like,
which in my experience as I coached people, there's a lot of fear around even sometimes letting ourselves know what we want.
For sure. And how much grandiosity and like spectacle seem to be kind of laid over people's relationship with themselves. That if you ask, I work with men mostly, these days. And, if you ask men from a place of like, okay, no shame, if you had a magic wand, what would you create for yourself sexually? And it's like ludicrous, extreme sexual behavior. Like, it's just like completely far-fetched, like if it, aside from like ethics or what is realistic or whatever, just looking at that is like, yeah, it's not really likely to provide the sort of satisfaction that comes from something completely different. And that is
I got a
interesting to
little
me.
lost.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're saying the ludicrous behavior is like it's just such a wide range of what the men you ask want, or what did you mean
What
by
I
that?
mean is that like it seems like people's ideas of what will bring them the most fulfillment, and if they could just, if they like got a genie to come out of the bottle and he's like, "Hey, what do you want sexually?"
Yes.
That what a lot of people would choose is not actually something that would be truly fulfilling. And if you look into the like lifestyles of the rich and famous, for example, or people that have had these kind of extreme sexual lives, that they usually arrive at a place of like,
emptiness.
It didn't work. Yeah, like it didn't work. I did the, 27 girlfriends from different ethnicities, and I still just feel kind of like alone and dissatisfied.
Yes.
And this is not different than all kinds of other things like related to wealth and other kinds of achievement and stuff, that it seems like our perception of what would be truly meaningful versus what is, it's almost like from a humanistic perspective and from a real sense of self-awareness, they don't line up. It's like what we think would be the most meaningful and most fulfilling actually isn't. And the people that have been there report back that like, that wasn't what it was cracked up to be. I still feel heartbroken and alone. I'm still suffering. I still feel the same. Yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's extreme, but it could just be as simple as like, it didn't work, like I won a Grammy, or I got I'm a billionaire, and like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm still me.
Right. I'm still feeling, whatever it is, like you said, I'm still feeling lonely, or I'm still there's something that feels like it's missing, or I'm not, right. Something doesn't feel meaningful or satisfying.
Yeah. So this question of like, what does, and there's two different layers to this. Like one of them, this becomes a conversation about, like how outside in self-esteem can just be like a bottomless pit of unmetness. And like, it's just a black hole. It doesn't matter what you do. There's just this constant feeling of a void, just trying to fill it never works.
Yeah.
And if we, can manage to get out of that whole game, then we're looking at what is truly fulfilling and satiating and complete. And that's the conversation that I think can be very useful and worth having, and maybe where we could spend the most time today is looking into that, because it's almost like the story, if I were to frame it, is like, what if our longings or our yearnings or our creative impulse, let's say, does resolve in some sense of completion or fulfillment? There's like a radical idea, right? But like, what if we're not just like hungry ghosts of hedonism, and there is actually a sense of like, oh, I feel really fulfilled. This is right for me. This is truly right for me. And that it's likely
not, I think from what you just said, tell me if I'm getting this right, it's likely not what a lot of people think it would be, but that there is some kind of fulfillment or satisfaction available. Yeah,
totally. Yeah. So usually when if you were to ask like the general public about that, what you'll hear is like a lot of novelty and spectacle and variety, and just, this typical kind of trope. People want extreme sexual behavior and a wide variety of partners, if not just going on a wild adventure with their wife or whatever. Yeah. But like, extreme things, like extreme behavior that we could look at and just see is a divergence from what I perceive to really be an expression of love and aliveness. It's great.
Okay. So different. What are you seeing that is actually the path to fulfillment, satisfaction, or, what are the men you're working with also finding as you help them unravel that original fantasy?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of unlearning, I think, even in like even earnest sex positive education and stuff in the sexual liberation movement is very focused on thinking your way into a fulfilling sex life, which is
Mm.
kind of what we're touching on already. But this idea that like your fantasies or whatever are like the ticket home is a common message in the zeitgeist, let's say, of like, what are your fantasies is like a thing that you're supposed to talk about, you know, that you're
Right.
supposed to understand what that is. And that's what you're supposed to discuss with your partners if you want to have a really spicy marriage or something like that. Is like, what are your
Yes.
fantasies and yada,
Yep.
yada, yada. And it's like that can be helpful, and I think it can be liberating and heal shame, or at least kind of normalize different parts of ourselves, and to just be like, okay, this is very human and normal and there's nothing wrong with you. But it seems like when people are like, okay, so now we need to like put on a schoolgirl outfit or whatever, it just becomes
Get
sort
out
of
the
like,
whips and like,
yeah, is that really what nature wants? Is that really an expression of essence? Is that really like
right.
beyond
And it could be
our
part of it. We're not making that wrong, you know.
Totally
They're
not.
yeah.
Totally not. But I think that like there's a point where it's like, how much more novelty and like weird fetish do we need to be fulfilled? And when can we actually just kind of go on the descent or the ascent into experiences that are so much more fulfilling in my experience than this other thing? So,
okay, so
from
holding that as, right, again, nothing wrong with it, totally possible and part of it, but what are you seeing that's deeper and more real?
Well, what I have observed is that often feels like it just never ends. It's like more novelty, more spectacle.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, I checked that box and now I'm done. It's like, oh, now the next thing, the new toy, the bigger
just like
experience.
you were saying, right? It's like that same kind of void.
It's similar to like addiction. It's like a context of unmetness that is like, it's hedonistic indulgence. It seems like addiction. It's not really about the fulfillment. So I would say like a cornerstone of my teaching or my inquiry is around the concept of integrity. And what I mean by integrity is not typically like integrity usually for most people means something about ethics or morality or whatever. And when I talk about integrity, what I mean is more along the lines of wholeness, like a sense of like, am I intact from a place of true authenticity? Am I in right relationship with my whole self? Am I integrated? Am I an integrated person who is succeeding based on what actually matters to me? And do I even know who I really am? Yeah. So integrity is interesting. And we could say sexual integrity is a part of that, is the cornerstone or the foundation of what I've been investigating, is just trying to look at like who are we as sexual beings, and what does it mean to be whole and complete, and not just to and to hold that with dignity, and to also hold that with creativity and empowerment, and to take seriously that like maybe, just maybe, this matters. Maybe that there's real significance in having a truly fulfilling sex life, and maybe there's real consequence in not having a truly fulfilling sex life, which is something that I find to be profound. And
I was just thinking about that in terms of, you know, sometimes when I work with couples and one person wants more sex than another, they haven't yet gotten to this place of what would our sexual integrity be, or right beyond the fantasies, beyond the one of us is in costumes or one of us does something else. And you know, I often support people to look at the why, or the kind of that deeper layer of, why do I want to have this experience? Yeah. What is it going to give me, or what am I longing for or yearning for?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is such a big thing, right? Like if we unpacked every detail of what you just said, we could be here for a couple hours. Just even the simplicity of like when one partner wants more sex than the other, and how that often plays into kind of conclusions, or like we have mismatched libido, or like I'm out of that stage of my life now, or whatever, you know, whatever things that people kind of arrive at conclusively of like, oh, this is fact, or like, this is the ground we walk on now. And, you know, from what I've seen, and I'm sure that you have seen this as much, if not more than I have, is how much when people start to explore different kinds of intimate experiences, that whole set of conclusions goes out the window pretty fast. Yeah. And this is very true with women in general, is that like their association with sex and sexual desire is based on what they know.
Hmm.
So the sense of like, oh, if a woman is met differently, I've seen it again and again that suddenly her sexual appetite and interests are different, and her relationship with her husband is then different.
It's different. I've often theorized that, and going through perimenopause myself, I know that there are biological hormonal experiences of fluctuations in desire. Like that is real. There's no doubt in my mind. And I've often theorized that if, I'm going to say women, but maybe this is a people thing, if women were actually known and cherished and understood and met
mm-hmm.
in the moment with love and curiosity and a desire for their pleasure to, blossom, and
Mm-hmm.
like, and for that intimate experience to be a portal into healing and growth and passion and spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
like there's so much possible that I think is left on the table. And that if those things were happening, I think there would be less fade and fizzle in relationships.
Yeah. It's so interesting because like I could apply everything that you just said to men as well, but
Okay.
it seems like men just are way more horny than women throughout their lives. And this is not true. I'm making a very general statement,
It's not
but
true for everybody.
there's exceptions to that.
Yep.
I've met many women who have tremendous sexual appetites through the different stages and decades of their lives. And I know men that don't have that so strongly, but I've also seen that, again, when men get their hormones right and they take care of their bodies, and that, that they're physically vital, that their libido changes, or when men stop being addicted to porn or ejaculation or something like that, then that can also really impact their sense of libido and this craving that they experience. But anyways, I think that like what we're touching on is that within our landscape of relational behavior, it seems like men and women are not meeting each other, but men can't help but being horny and full of desire. So then they end up running with all of this sexual desire in a direction that is super fucking alienating for most women.
Yep.
And then a lot of women that it's not alienating for go into self-abandonment and objectification. And then we see younger and younger women kind of being these like pinup girls because they are appealing and identifying themselves with this totally weird culture of male sexuality that is being promoted and that younger and younger generations are being kind of indoctrinated into.
Yep.
And this is a huge schism in the fabric of our world. And it seems like there's an underlying myth that female sexual needs and male sexual needs are not compatible fundamentally. And like maybe the best thing that we could do is find like a win-lose or some sort of compromise or sacrifice, or she'll be the dutiful wife, or you can be a good feminist and like calm down your horniness, dude, or like be better at foreplay, or be more patient with her lack of interest, or like.
Okay, so what else? These are amazing examples, right? Like what else is possible? What else are you seeing?
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is that like when we start to approach sex from body intelligence, what I mean by that is to orient around how do we relate to this part of our lives being a body-based experience instead of being a mind-based experience, and how much couples getting in the practice of experiencing physiological calm and closeness and co-regulation as a regular touch point in their relationship often shifts the entire conversation. Because there's this sense of like, if we're belly to belly, breathing deeply and regulating together and being cozy on a regular basis, let's see from there what the libido is for each partner, right? Like this sense of like when we actually come into safety, embodied safety and physical intimacy with each other, where we're sensing each other and nourishing each other, and just on a very basic physical level, then the likelihood of us finding a meeting point is so much easier, where we say like men have this like fiery sexual desire, and then maybe women have a more complex or oceanic kind of way of sexual opening. And I'm speaking in very heteronormative terms here, but just for the sake of ease of conversation here, that's just such an easier starting point, or we could say like the soil that you grow a thriving sexual partnership out of. It's just a way more nutrient rich and reliable ground to grow a thriving sexual partnership out of, is one where you experience. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in the common culture, that is not even referenced or taught or discussed, right? I mean, in tantric culture and sex positive culture, but what we grow up with, most of us, that is not even named.
Yeah. And I think that this goes back to how like mind centric, let's say, like there's so many myths in our culture that kind of put us inside of a frame of what it is to be human that doesn't really lend well to having a good life.
Yeah.
Or one example of this is I spoke to somebody recently who was getting his PhD from NYU in psychology with the intention of having a clinical practice and then being a professor. And they literally did not speak about somatics or nervous system awareness or like having the agency to direct your attention on something besides your thoughts.
Wow.
So what I mean by that is the entire training that this person was going through in like an 8-year post-grad program or whatever was like stories in the mind. Like the whole entire thing was like, let's go deep into the psychology matrix of thoughts and beliefs and yada, yada, yada.
As though psychology is only the mind.
Exactly. Which for me is like so insane, because if you change the state of regulation in a nervous system, the mental activity is completely different. So this premise of like, anybody who spent enough time in group fields will see that at a certain point when there is escalation or dysregulation in a group field, people get very heady.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's group field. Most people aren't even talking about group field.
I just mean like being in a group exploration, being in a group of people in present physical space where,
you're exploring the impact on each other.
Exactly. Just being in a kind of candor and openness and an exploration of like, what's it actually like in this room? What's going on for all of us, or what it feels true and authentic or whatever. There's so many ways that I could frame it, but the premise is that like, it's just so obvious if you're in those kinds of environments and you pay attention that like the thoughts that people have don't mean anything at all. It's just like you're in a dysregulated nervous system and the leaves on that tree are certain kinds of thoughts. They don't mean anything. You can follow those threads till the end of time. They will lead you nowhere. If you focus on coming back to a place of resource and physiological calm, it's like, I don't even know what we're talking about. Like, what is that?
Interesting.
And I think this is
they don't mean anything. It's kind of just like this extraneous noise that just, it's sort of like this babble in our minds that we've, all the things that we've experienced or processed or, we've we're sponges, like we absorb from our childhood and all that shit, just round and round.
It gets even weirder, because sometimes it's even related to the upper limits problem, as Gay Hendricks has framed it, is the sense that like we only feel safe experiencing so much pleasure and success and abundance, and then at a certain point we might contract because it's like, I don't feel okay being this happy or experiencing this much pleasure.
Or this pleasure, yes.
So sometimes the sense of like agitation and conflict on a body level can be for that reason. So chasing after like, oh, we just had this conflict and we need to work it out is like, maybe you don't. It's like, oh, who's right? Are you right? Or am I right? Is this wrong? Like this gets into dynamics that a lot of married folks or people that are in committed relationships will find to be familiar, where it's like, it doesn't even matter what the conflict was about. Like Terry Real
don't even remember what the conflict was about.
Exactly. Terry Real has this amazing quote where he says something like, the only sensible answer to who is right in a marital conflict is who cares.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's like, who fucking cares? It doesn't matter who's right. What matters is how do we work together to have a great life? Like, that's it. It's like, it doesn't matter. If you want to be right, then like take up debate, not intimacy.
Right.
That's
not you can either I've heard someone else say, you can either be right or you can be connected. It's like, the point is, how do we come together and actually enjoy each other, impact the world, right? And move beyond these babbling
Yeah,
Brooks
move
in our
beyond is
head.
a great way to frame it. Yeah, can we just let things go and focus on what matters instead of getting so nitpicky in the
Yeah.
endless mind loops, right? So there's the big shift in my personal life and what I've found to be useful in facilitation and coaching work, and also in kind of training people into a different model, is the transition between, like, am I primarily body intelligence based or am I
Mm,
primarily cognitive intelligence based? Because it seems like if you're focusing on cognition to be
yeah.
the way that you navigate your whole life, the quality of your relationships and the quality of your sex life will suffer, and there is no way around that. If we don't understand that, like, body experience is equally, if not more important than psychological and cognitive experience when we're looking at sex and intimacy,
Yep.
then we're just playing the wrong game, because you'll never figure that out. You know, there's this sense of like, men want to understand women and they want to understand how to please women. And if you're trying to figure out how to do that with your mind, you're going to lose. There is no
I
way
love
that
that
you
you
can
said that.
understand the complexity of female sexuality from a
From your
real
mind.
place of
Yes.
present attunement from
Yes.
your mind. It's
Yes.
helpful for us to have training, like, I think basic understanding of female anatomy and
Yeah.
female pelvic and sexual anatomy is great, and having some general understanding of technique and stuff like that is
Yes.
all good. But
But
if
there
you
is
only have
nothing
that,
like, yeah, there's nothing
yes,
like being with a partner, whatever gender, but we're talking more, with the men here, who can be present and attuned to not only my body, but my heart and my soul and
yeah,
my spirit and all of
yeah,
that in the moment.
yes,
There's nothing like that.
for sure. And if you talk to enough women about sex, you'll hear the same thing over and over again of like, oh, there are just some guys who know how to touch me, or there was this one guy, or I'll never forget that night, or
And it's
something.
not about the angle, or usually, right? Like,
No,
it's about that kind of
no.
presence.
Exactly.
So
Because when we think
how,
it's about the angle, then it's like a Hitachi wand and, like,
right.
somebody
And I
with a
gotta,
13-inch penis.
and I've
It's
got to
not.
do something else other than what is arising in this moment, or other than what we are co-creating or revealing in this moment.
Well, I mean, that gets into some complexity around masculinity and femininity, because I think the masculine often has a drive. I think that it's important to really learn how to be present and to enjoy the moment. But to go into this thing of like, what is true fulfillment?
Yeah.
I think for men, there is a, let's say, a goal, and we often don't know what it is. But
I
this is
like
a really
that.
interesting thing to unpack, because a lot
Yeah.
of people who teach sex of just being like, just let go of the goal. And I think it's important to understand that, so
I
that
like
we're
the
able to
yes
track
and.
presence
Mhm.
enough to
Mhm.
not be overriding or like dissociating from what is actually occurring because we have an agenda that we're following instead of
Yes.
being here. So it's more like order, where it's like
Okay.
presence and attunement is the ground. Like,
Yeah.
that is the most important thing. And then also operating from a sense of understanding more technical components and having an orientation of like, there is a direction.
Yeah.
And something that a lot of men resonate with, which I've said this to so many guys and they're like, that's fucking true. Where it's like, do you want whoever you're with to have the most amazing orgasms humanly possible?
And
For
they,
sure.
yes. Okay.
Definitely this. And any man who's like, no, I don't really care about that, I'm like, I don't believe you. And just to be clear, I have encountered almost zero men who do not immediately resonate with that.
Okay.
Like, that you want whoever you're with to have the most amazing orgasm she ever could or ever has, or any human ever could. That it's just kind of like, for sure, I
So, and
definitely
you're
want
saying like
that.
that can be more of a new framing around a goal, as opposed to we reach a climax, or we, right? Like, I don't know, play
Well,
that
what
out a
I'm
little bit.
looking at here is basically like, what is the urge? How does it resolve? Like, what is the creative impulse? Like, okay, that's completion. That's
Okay.
like, oh, this thing that I'm wanting to experience is like when you
How do we get
yawn.
there actually?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like when you yawn, and it's like, sometimes it's, if somebody, like, if you cut off your own yawn, or somebody like interrupts it, or you're trying to not be a weirdo or whatever, that there's this feeling of like, whatever that biological process is that has a
Did
full
not
circle,
complete.
it didn't happen, right? And that's just I think that's a good analogy for looking at like, our sexuality completes itself.
Okay.
And male sexuality, as far as I can tell in my own practice and exploration, and in being with a lot of men in like a teaching and coaching environment, the complete process has to do with impact too. that it's, I
Okay.
want to express the ranges of my sexuality, of my sexual expression.
Okay.
And I want to be met in that, and the affect or the impact to resolve. So it's like, I don't just want to like thrust my penis inside of a warm, wet space.
Yeah.
I want that, and I want to feel the impact that it has on the woman is the completion. That
Interesting.
it's
Okay.
the sense of like, there is no resolution that is not a co-created thing. The
Yeah.
expression completing itself is about the impact.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, tell me if I'm understanding you, is there is a shifting from the goal of we have to reach a climax or we have to get somewhere, to a shift in the impact, or like that it is a co-created experience, or
Yeah, it's a very nuanced conversation that we're getting into, and let's see how far we get. But like, I think that a lot of people's association to climax is about a certain kind of orgasm that I think is not actually related to that kind of resolution that we're seeking.
okay.
That feeling of like that deep sense of fulfillment, I think, does not come from peak orgasms in the way that most people are used to, for men or for women.
Yeah.
So I think that that's just one layer of
Which is
mythology and
huge.
misunderstanding. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And what I would say is, like, not only is that not it, if you're having those kinds of orgasms on a regular basis, your body is oriented in that direction,
Yeah.
which is very like dopamine based, sensation seeking. To this question that we were speaking about before we started rolling here, what is sex for?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people orient around sex being for release and being for a kind of regulation.
Yeah.
And there are ways to use sex for regulation that I think are supportive. I use this framework in my teaching of the distinction between limited and limitless sex. And it's kind of like a shitty metaphor, but it works really well to prove a point of like, all of that stuff, you can do it. And it, you know, it has some consequences that are maybe good or maybe bad or whatever, but like, that is limited. Yeah. You're not going to end up in the place where you experience that true sense of satisfaction and yes. completion, like sexual completion. Yeah. If you go that way, you can go that way a million times. And like, if it worked, you would have experienced that sense of deep fulfillment at some point, but you haven't.
I love you turning this on its head, that like the completion or the resolution, right, is in a different place than most of us were taught. And totally. that peak orgasmic state on its own actually isn't that.
No, it doesn't work. No. And the thing that I think is confusing is that people are like, oh, well, I was feeling tense and now I feel better.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not even that the game is over. It's the game is paused. Mm-hmm. And some people say, we're like, oh, it's just a few minutes and I can go again. No. I think it's actually a few weeks before our bodies get back to that place. And this is true for men and women. It's not for free, right? Like there's real consequences to this. And
what can you say? Can you speak to that? What the consequences actually are? That you see?
For sure. So one very simple one, and this is kind of, we could get more clinical and talk about what happens when people are having these kinds of orgasms and relating to their vulvas or their penises like this from like a clinical orientation. And it's not small. There's fucking huge, unarguable consequences from these kinds of masturbation, solo sex, and sex activities, especially as a habit over time. But one of the things that's more fun to talk about, let's say, is that what it takes to expand into these different ranges, or to have enough juice to continue to really infiltrate these different ranges and how can I be more clear for people that don't have this language? Like basically you have to get so super horny to go in the direction of where that true sense of resolution is. If you're blowing it out or rubbing your clit all the time and having a peak orgasm, you cannot get that horny. It will not, you cannot do that. Bodies don't do that. Like it's like an energy leak. It's like depleting the container of the essential material that it needs to go there. right? So it's like we need to be able to sustain tremendous sexual charge to expand
Yes.
into these territories.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's even in the vernacular of our language of like, oh, sexual tension, right? It's
Yes.
like it's like we're inside of a myth. It's like oh, there's sexual tension, and then you climax, and
And then
then
you
you
kind of
relieve the tension, and that's what
I
sex
actually
is
remember
about,
like a
right?
decade ago when I was creating a class, I remember using an image of a balloon where it was like, okay, allowing yourself to expand, to hold more air,
Mm-hmm.
more sexual charge, more of that energy rather than just dissipating it, right? Like, oh, I'm so full, I'm going to pop. Most people don't have
Yes.
the experience of being able to be like, what's it like to actually feel more and more and more without,
Yes.
I need to get rid of this.
Yes. And I think that like our culture that's pretty like fundamentally anti-masculine in certain ways, or let's say is very confused about its relationship with the masculine,
Yeah.
that so many men in their desire to be honorable men and to have integrity, they orient around diminishing their masculine power, their masculine vitality, where there's a sense of
Yeah.
like, I don't know how to
Right.
deal with that.
I
I
should
don't know that
shrink.
anyone.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's like this sense of like, it's not only how do I hold more sexual charge, it's how do I diminish the source of my sexual charge
Yes.
fundamentally
Yeah.
so that I'm not in a problematic position given that I have all of this masculine charge or all of this
Right.
lust or whatever.
Versus
And
being
it's
able to
super
walk around
confusing.
in the world with all of this, but
Yes.
knowing that you don't have to,
Yes.
suddenly direct it at someone or spill it on someone, like that you can actually have that
Yes.
vitality and that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Totally. Yeah. So there's this sense of like, if we really were with the fullness of our potency, with the fullness
Mhm.
of our life force moving through our bodies, what would that be like? And I think for a lot of people, it would be very uncomfortable and it would be really scary. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that like, to speak to the female side of it, that a lot of women feel really unsafe with how sensual and juicy they feel, even just like walking in a way that feels truly pleasurable for them is like, I can't do this in like
Certain
in most
places. Yeah.
places where there's other people. I can't even walk in the way that feels ergonomically the most functional and the most sensually pleasurable because I'm not safe to be like that. Like there's an inherent, like I need to shut down and limit the flow of aliveness and pleasure in my own body just to be in
Right.
this world, to feel safe in this world.
Right. Which is like on the side when I'm working with women, how to help women feel their own strength and power and their intuition of like, oh, yep, this is a moment where I'm going to bring that energy back in. Or, right. Same
Yes.
with whatever, no matter what gender, it's like, we don't have to stay in one form, or we don't have to stay fully expanded and make ourselves wrong if we shrink, but we also don't have to shrink and, not actually feel
Yeah.
that energy. Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say that like one way to reframe what you just said is it has to do with choice. It has
Yes.
to do with being adaptive and being
Yes.
dynamic and being able to show up for the situation that is in front of us in the way
Yep.
that would be the most life-giving and generous and beautiful for us and others. That like,
Yep.
if that's the game that we're playing, there's obviously so many situations where you don't want to demonstrate how sexually desirable you are as a woman. And
Yeah.
like that's not a responsible way to live, obviously. And then there are so many women who also experience that sense of shutdown as a projection of this feeling of unsafety in a misread that they're operating from old information. And this is very complex territory that I don't think we need to go down
I
so
don't think
much.
we need
But
to go in there, but
yeah, I think there's something to circle back to about like when men are actually exploring, unlocking, or embodying their full sexual power and how to do that in integrity and with honor and in a way that is actually like being channeled towards how I want to contribute in the way that I want to feel in my body.
Yeah.
And also back to the thing that we were discussing before of like, how do I channel that in a way where I'm going to be met?
Yes.
Because it's like what if women actually not only would be willing and want to meet you there because they want to love you, but that's also for her.
Yeah.
that her showing up to meet you there is for her greatest benefit, right?
Yes.
And I think that this can be so validating of an idea, like such a almost radical of a concept for men, that it's like, oh, it's not just that she is being loving and meeting me there. That's also for her. Right. That her meeting me there and her understanding what it is to fully receive the fullness of my sexuality and all of these ranges is the path to her expansion and her awakening. And this is very confusing for people to try to navigate, because there's so much going on in the subconscious and the unconscious, and all of these invisible forces that relate to trauma and conditioning and sexual shame and deep wounding that is often ancestral and collective. How do we get out of this influence where there's all these invisible forces that make it damn hard, if not impossible, for people to experience true sexual fulfillment? So it makes sense that we're just blowing it out. It makes sense that we're just like, I have no idea, so I'm just going to pick the low-hanging fruit, because like I can't help but being horny, and I can't help that like I have a penis that does penis things. Right. So I might as well just do this thing, right? Yes. And I think there's another part of it where like human beings learn through contrast, and we learn by being able to identify difference. And when people are not around, like, I'll frame it like this. I think most people have never even met somebody who is sexually fulfilled.
Interesting.
So it's like, how would you be able to be like, oh, whatever that is, I want that? Where it's like my former teaching partner, he wrote this in our marketing materials, where if your whole life, the only food that you ever saw ever was donuts, you would just think that food is donuts and donuts is food. And you would have no idea why you feel so bad. You would have no idea why you feel shitty. And every time you're hungry, you'd be like, oh, I love a donut. Right. And someone's like, hey, you want to eat? You'd be like, sure, I'll take a donut. Yeah. And I think that this is actually the reality that we are living in sexually, is that people live in a sandbox and they think that it's the real world, and it's not the real world.
Yes.
It's a myth.
So this is, we're going to sort of leave it on a cliffhanger. We're going to wind down because we have to wrap up. But I think it's brilliant, right? It's like that sense of, yes, it's like the Truman Show, right? We're playing in this sandbox that seems like it is the reality or the only reality. And yet you and I both know that it's not. So, okay, part of this is going to be, part of the solution in a way is going to be, where can people find you? And
it's like, what do we do? Like, we're listening and we're like, we agree. What do we do? Yeah.
Why don't you just give a minute or two of, a practice, a suggestion, like what would be the first step for someone who's exploring this? And then we can talk about where to find you.
Mm-hmm. It's an impossible task. What I would say is to build on what we were discussing before, that learning about how your nervous system works is a really worthwhile thing, because so much of what we experience psychologically and emotionally is simply just what happens when you're in a dysregulated nervous system. So we could say that like this investigation is like the how of consciousness. Like, what is going on? Why do I feel this way? Why do I think this way? What is actually happening here? So that I can be aware to take responsibility for my life and for creating what I want. Because if you don't understand how your body works and how your nervous systems work and how that impacts other people, then we're just feeling our way around in the dark and we have no idea. And there's basically no way to take responsibility for your life if you don't understand some very basic things about how your body works. There will just be these unseen
how your body works and how that interplays with your psyche and your emotions and all of the things in your
And back to this thing of like, so many men want the like feral, liberated, confident, wild woman, and they have no idea how to open that Pandora's box of a woman's like liberated sexuality. And a big part of it is because of what we're talking about, is that like for that to open, her body, and this is it's not even her mind, her body needs to experience safety, which can only occur in co-regulation with you. She is sensing you so deeply.
Yeah.
And if you are not deeply present to your own experience and to hers, it's basically impossible for her to feel safe enough to open that deeply. So this synergy of like really understanding embodied relational safety and understanding how to get so super horny that you can go places is a winning combination.
I love it.
From that place, so much territory can open. So I'll leave it there.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for being on the deep train, the unraveling paradigms train, the recognizing that sexual integrity exists, and, you know, being someone who can speak to the depth and the breadth of what's possible, you know, beyond the fantasy, like the actual real foundational, we could meet each other and be fulfilled in ways that, like you said, many or most people have never experienced.
Yeah. Most people don't even know it's a thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So where can people find
you? Thank you
you?
for these kind words. Appreciate the compliments and kind words. And it's been a blessing and a burden that I am blessed to carry, for sure.
Yes, I can imagine.
So one thing that I can mention is if this topic of integrity, or just very generally how to have a great sex life, is of interest to you, we made an assessment to give people an opportunity to reflect on what are the actual building blocks of a great sex life.
Great.
And this is a really useful way for people to just be able to like have a real mirror and compass. This premise of like, if you have the wrong map and you don't know where you're starting, it's pretty hard to get to some place that you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
So this assessment was a way for us to provide a resource for people to just look at, like, what are great sex lives actually made of, and where do I stand with that?
Yeah.
So I guess we'll put this in the show notes or whatever, but bedroomcompass.com is a place that you can find that. And I'm also around on socials and stuff. My name, Rob Kanzler, Kancler is how you can find me, or robkanzler.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for the interview. I appreciate your interview style. It's very present and engaging. Fun to play with you here.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.